William F. Jasper, senior editor of the New American Magazine, investigative reporter, author. He attended the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro and exposed the global authoritarian agenda being proposed to the planetary environmental regulation. You know, nobody deserves more credit exposing the fake green agenda to establish world government than the New American, and chief among them, William F. Jasper, who I ran into in 1999 at an urban warfare martial law takeover drill in Northern California, or in Central California in Oakland. It was interesting running into him at that event. He's got Alex Newman, who also writes as a freelancer for the New American with him. They're on the same phone. We'll go to him in a moment. But we were talking about how they're denying there's global government while they're announcing that there's global government. We have the treaty here that actually says it's meant to shut down the third world and starve these people to death. They sold the third world as if it was some communistic experiment to give them free goodies. But just like Russians who believed Lenin, all they found out was they were going to slave camps. So let's talk about what you're witnessing there on the ground, what's behind this movement. Maurice Strong, who you got to see in person, say in Rio de Janeiro, we want to destroy the industrial society, what their goals are, who they are. Explain to people who think that leftists and communists are grassroots what's really behind that. And just break it down for us, William F. Jasper.
Well, Alex, there are so many things that we see going on here, but one of the most striking things is that I've written about for many years, particularly since Rio de Janeiro. We're seeing now the culmination of an effort that was begun there. We know the name now NGO, non-governmental organizations. Back then, 17 and a half years ago in Rio, that was pretty much a newly invented term. But Rio was the first launch pad of the NGOs as a revolutionary parliamentary movement.
They're really just UN spies that take over your local town.
Well, yes, in all different kinds of areas. Of course, mostly with the Earth Summit, and with this one, we're talking about environmentalist, so-called environmentalist organization. At least that is the pretext that they use. They feign concern for all things natureful, the earth, the sky, the feathery, furry little creatures, etc. Of course, many of the true believers, the foot soldiers out there, they do believe all this. But the people at the top, the Maurice Strongs, the David Rockefellers, the Stephen Rockefellers, the George Soros, etc., who are funding all of these things and organizing and launching all these different groups, they have another agenda in mind, which is to use concern for the environment as a means of taking over more and more control of our economy, control of all aspects of our lives. Well, in Rio de Janeiro, we had around 20 to 30,000 different NGO activists arrive there. And what was different there in Rio from today is, in Rio, all of these activists arrived there. This was part of the rent-a-mob that the UN had brought there with all of its influence and money.
That makes the UN look moderate. The UN is like, we're only socialists that want to tax you at 20%, and then all the communists waving red flags, literally. In fact, we'll roll some of that video in the background. They're calling for total government, destruction of all capitalism, so that allows the UN to look more moderate.
Well, that's one of the functions. You certainly have a lot of the NGOs performing that function. Then you have other NGOs that take the more moderate socialist position. That is, we're very reasonable. All we're asking for is what is fair for in this case, Mother Earth, etc. And so you have a push-pull effect going on there. But in Rio, they were outside. They had their own village where they agitated from and carried on street theater and parades, etc. And then the UN was interacting with them. Maurice Strong and Gorbachev and Castro would go down to the village and whatnot. But since then, in 95 at Cairo and then 98 at Rome for the International Criminal Court, and all of the UN summits since then, both environmental and human rights and all of the other summits, they started bringing the NGOs actually into the UN, where their delegates came in almost on an equal footing, or actually a superior footing to elected representatives. Now,
and how this works is the UN can then point at their employees and say, these are stakeholders, that's a key word when you hear that, for sustainability. What do the people want? We want world communism. And they go, that's what the people want.
Exactly. This is the charade known as civil society. Every one of these people is called a stakeholder. That is, they hold some kind of stake in all of these goings on here, and they are supposedly representative of some sector of humanity or society. But of course, they're not elected by anyone. They are not accountable to anyone. Their funding is coming from the various governments. The big funders start out being the foundations: Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Soros Foundation, etc. And then they've taught these people how to then get on the government dole so that we're paying for it directly, so that the UN, the EU, all the various EU individual governments, the U.S. foreign aid government, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, are funding these thousands of NGO organizations to the tune really of billions of dollars a year. So they're using our tax dollars, the other taxpayers' dollars from around the world, to fund these people who are working against our interests. And a very good example of that. This was a completely closed, uninclusive, exclusive event here. You didn't see a single one of the major realist scientists or scientific organizations allowed.
Let me interrupt you. Again, William F. Jasper, the editor of the New American Magazine, on with us from Copenhagen, Denmark, in the last 48 hours of this global governance establishing event, because I want to get to not just the structure, but also, are they successful this year in your eyes, or is this a failure, and your take on ClimateGate and your overall view on things. But take Lord Monckton. We interviewed Christopher Monckton last hour, or the first hour of the show, and he talked about how he is a House of Lords member. So he had passes in, and the UN said, don't let him in. And when they started roughing him up, so he agreed to leave. When he turned around, the cop knocked him over, busted his head and leg open, and just laughed about it. And so they're now beating up members of the House of Lords. I mean, this guy's a royal, and they're beating him up. And usually the globalists grovel to royalty. Even though he had passes, that's how dictatorial these people are. This happened today.
Well, right. See, I didn't even know about that. He was supposed to be coming here. We were going to interview him right outside the Media Center, which is inside the larger Bella Center here where all this is taking place. And we were waiting for him, and his wife ended up calling saying that he had tried to get in, but he couldn't get in. And that was the same with Mark Morano, who has a NGO. He's accredited. He was supposed to have passes. They wouldn't allow him in. Even today, Senator Inhofe came here, Senator from Oklahoma. He's the lead one in the U.S. Congress opposing all of this. And here he's a senior member of Congress. He's the vice chairman of the Senate chairman, minority chairman of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works that handles all of these things.
He's in the top 10 Republican leaders in the United States, a powerful U.S. senator. Are you about to tell me he wasn't allowed in?
He was allowed in, but they wouldn't give him a room to. Here, Greenpeace, Teams of the Earth, all of the rest of the environmentalist groups, they have rooms. They give official presentations here. They're giving great big panels and everything. They wouldn't allow him to do that. He had to come in here, give we couldn't even. And he had to stand on the stairs outside and give his short speech. And most of us couldn't even get out there to get him because they put up special security today in the hallway between our place and
so they basically stuck Senator Inhofe in a free speech zone.
True, and he was only going to be here for a couple of hours because he had votes in the Senate. So he arrived here, and the very limited time that he had here, he couldn't even do anything. He just gave a statement, and then I taught his assistant, his chief of staff, Matt Dempsey, came around and handed out the printed copies of his statement. So that was the voice of diversity here. They wouldn't allow Senator Inhofe in. They wouldn't allow Lord Monckton in. They wouldn't allow Mark Morano. Many of the other scientists who wanted to come here. They won't let them speak here. And so,
can you believe that they beat up Monckton, and then there's all these videos?
I was completely unaware of that. That is just incredible, because here yesterday they had literally thousands of these NGO ragamuffins in here, mostly high school and college kids are just here on a lark. Yes, they're all passionate and everything, but they allowed them to come in and actually stage demonstrations, and they had to sit down in the middle of the thoroughfare there, blocking the way, holding up their signs. That was fine. They let them. So, and all the media rushed to give them billions of dollars. Here you have all of the press from all over the world here, all the cameras and whatnot. So here, these kids who wouldn't even give their full names, they would just sit down there and they hold up signs saying, we're not leaving until we get an agreement that is fair, balanced, and ambitious.